Hey guys, this is Fergal from PokerVIP. Welcome to part 2 of our player review for Bolanis, who is currently playing over on Unibet Poker. We're going to pick off literally right where we dropped off with part 1. So without further ado, we'll jump straight into the action. So pocket 6s, pretty easy open here from mid position. And the pocket 2s, I would be inclined to go ahead and 3-bet here. Calling is reasonable, but 3-betting, we're just going to get a lot of folds here and pick up the pot uncontested a huge chunk of the time. And when we do get called, if we do manage to bink a set, our chances of stacking our opponent go up exponentially. Disaster flop here for us. Can't really continue, so just check folding there. Queen 7 offsuit, nothing we're going to be able to do but fold. 8-5 offsuit as well in the small blind, nothing really we can do. Oh, sorry, Queen 7, we're on the button, sorry, I thought we were in the cutoff there, my apologies. From the button, it's a perfectly fine open. Finland leads here, which is kind of a tricky spot. I think we should just be checking back the turn here, pot controlling as much as possible. Pretty good run out all round for us. The only hand that we're really afraid of is a hand like a King Queen, and maybe some, like that's really about it though. I think his 2 pair combos and so on would be looking to bet turn as well. So yeah, we have a pretty easy bet on the river. Unfortunately, we don't get paid. So 10 jack, we are at least going to be defending, whether we want to call in position or 3-bet. Those are our only options. Folding if the small blind raised would not have been in the equation. King 10 suited, definitely opening from under the gun. Or we're actually 5-handed here because the Gonzo player is not dealt in. So we're technically from mid position. And when we get 3-bet the King 10 offsuit, yeah, just let it go. I don't like defending with that kind of hand. With the King Jack offsuit, I would be looking to ISO here versus Tufson's early under the gun open. I think checking back there is way too tight. We should be. I think this is probably the biggest issue I have with your play is how you're just letting people limping get away with it way too much. That's just a slam dunk ISO spot for me. So check calling versus when he goes for the pot, it seems perfectly fine. And then, yeah, facing this sizing, we definitely want to be opening it up. We can get called by some worse hands. We can get called by diamond draws and so on as well. So we want to protect our hand a little bit, and he can still call potentially with some worse pairs. And he goes ahead and he folds. Pocket 7's in the bottom right table, so when the open comes from a little bit earlier position, I think just flatting is fine. Let's see a 7 dealer. No 7, but a pretty good flop all around. Certainly one that we're going to not be folding to 1-bet. And a King Queen, I like your ISO here versus this perpetual limper. So I didn't actually see if there was a bet on the bottom right table or not. If there is, though, we should be definitely calling again. That 8 is just a fantastic card for us, giving us the belly buster. Betting 33 cent with our pair of 3s. Subliminal, I like it. I think folding the 7s there is far too nitty. We have an open ender, a belly buster, and our pair of 7s definitely has some showdown as well. So he can just have kind of overcards of these barreling and so on. I think folding there is too tight. Unless I misread that board, but I'm pretty sure we had the belly buster. I think. So we elected to 3-bet, I'm guessing, on the bottom right table. If we did 3-bet, I think we should be c-betting here. Oh wait, no, sorry, we're into 2 other people. No, into 2 other people, I think just giving up is fine. So I'm guessing the button opened, we 3-bet, and the big blind overcalled. big blind overcalling facing a 3-bet with his stack size, by the way, should not be something that's done very often. I would argue that if he is ever doing it, it should be exclusively traps, and even then it's, you know, it's not exactly fantastic either. The whole point of playing a 40 big blind stack is that it's just super easy to play, and you can kind of really profitably 4-bet jam. Ace Queen, obviously very easy open. Unfortunately, there is no action, and the King Jack offsuit definitely bringing this in from the button as well. We get 3-bet incredibly small. This Parta Jesus player, we're going to assume he is not very good overall. So here I don't see any. I'd just be pretty much just mashing the pot button versus this player and looking to get stacks in. So we have a pair to go along with our belly buster up on the top right table. I think checking back here is pretty reasonable. We don't really get value from many worse hands. I'd expect him to barrel his flush draws, so we're not really that concerned with the flushes. Betting, I expected the best hand very often here, which we do. But betting seems pretty optimistic. It's kind of hard for him to call with much worse there. He actually has one of the hands that he might elect to call with, but again, I don't know how frequently he will. And I like your bet here at the queens, and I'd be looking to follow through here with another bet in the river and expect to get called by all of villain's Jack X. So I think we can go a little bit smaller here, but definitely overall I like your line. Where we get called even lighter with the 8, my word. People do seem to not want to fold on this site. So with the ace-ace, this is an interesting spot. I mean, people have shown a lot of strength here already. There's an undergun open and the flat call. I think, yeah, I was gonna say this. I just like ripping it in here. It looks the weakest. Like if we just 4-bet here to like, you know, like €3 or 3.50 or something like that, it just looks so incredibly nutted. When we just rip it here though, we can have like, you know, people can just say like, oh, he probably just has ace king and call it off with all their pairs and that kind of thing. So I think this is our best chance of getting paid, but it's already going to be a nice enough spot regardless. Like there's already a decent amount of money in there, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Henrik Gass call it off here as well. He seems like he's a fairly passive player. He's called a 3-bet already, so he has a hand he kind of likes. But oh, classic cooler, kings into the aces, sick. So that's how you win at poker, kids. You just you just get aces, get up against kings, and hold. Nice. So 10-9 suited on the bottom left table. I would have been inclined to go ahead and bet this flop ourselves rather than check it back. Definitely betting the turn now. Checking the flop doesn't really seem to have too much merit, given that there's just a ton of bad cards for us. Obviously a great card did roll off on the turn, but in general there's going to be a huge amount of really negative cards for us there, so I think betting to protect our hand just a little bit and make later streets a bit easier to play makes more sense. Because if he doesn't have a piece of anything, it's going to be kind of hard to get much out of him unless he improves on the turn anyway, and if he does improve on the turn, he's almost certainly going to improve to a better hand, so checking back doesn't seem like it has too much merit at all. Given how deep we are here, I'd be inclined to go ahead and call the 6-9 suited. I mean, we're 200 big blinds deep. And Henrik Gass has proven himself to be a pretty weak player all around anyway, so his call doesn't really concern us at all. We would have whiffed the flop anyway, so no harm, no foul, but it's the kind of hand, it's definitely speculative, but we have absolute position, and as I said, we're super deep here. If we weren't as deep as we are, it's a trivial fold, but when we are this deep, we definitely want to be mixing it up and looking to win those 200 big blinds. Two easy raggedy ace-x full opens from the button, of course. So this is a board I'd be inclined to check this back. Like betting, it's going to be very hard to get paid by much worse here. So if we check back, we can induce some bluffs on turns, and we can also potentially get called down a little bit lighter by kind of pocket pairs. If he, if he improves to a 1-pair hand, if he has like say 10 jack and a jack rolls off or 10 rolls off, then he will call on the turn. But we're going to have it like most of his hands. We're going to have drawing close to dead. His pocket pairs and stuff like that, they might check call one street, but a lot of people just freeze up when they see that ace, so they'll kind of, there's definitely a reasonable chance that they're just going to go ahead and fold those kinds of hands. And as I said, his unpaired hands we have drawing close to dead, unless he has a 4 or a 5 in them, where he has, you know, the gut shots. Or some weird deuce or 3x as well. Pocket nines, I'd be looking to 3-bet here. And calling is just too passive. It's a button open. We're crushing his overall range, and it's just a pretty easy 3-bet for value spot for me. We've kind of backed ourselves into a corner now where we can't really do too much post flop. Check raising the 8-8 deuce seems like a big overplay, so we got a check call, and there's a pretty unfortunate turn for us here. When he goes quite large here, I think I'd just go ahead and let this one go. But as I said, pre-flop I would be looking to 3-bet here rather than just call and play out of position poker. King tray, a little bit wide. Not awful, definitely, but I think I'd be, I suppose given how little people seem to be 3-betting in these games, it's actually probably okay. In a game where people are kind of 3-betting from the blinds, closer to an optimal frequency, then I think king tray is definitely too wide. Again, only by like a margin, not substantially so, but wide enough that I would be looking to go ahead and make the fold. But and when people aren't really playing back at all, then yeah, I guess it's probably fine. The ace-10, we decide to flat the under the gun open with Henrik Gas coming along for the ride as well. We flop top, so certainly looking to see a turn. So I'd be looking just to go ahead and check call here, which we do by the looks of it. If he bets again and he bets large, I would be concerned. Still don't think we can fold, but I wouldn't be overly happy. He does bet, and he does bet quite large again. I think I would be looking to make the call here again and deciding on rivers. If he triple barrels the huge sizing again, I think folding is perfectly fine. I mean, if we're folding ace-10 there on the turn, we're essentially just folding absolutely everything, right? Now, it could be a decent exploitative fold. As I said, I'm not like overly familiar with this population, so maybe when people are just double barreling there, they just tend to have it, in which case it's a decent exploitative fold. But if we are folding there, if we're folding ace-10, we're just folding 100% there to double barrels, which means opponents can exploit us incredibly easily. But obviously our villain was showing a decent chunk of strength there, so it's not a spot where I'm in love with by any stretch, but I think folding is just too tight. King 8 offsuit, yeah, I think I like firing this flop. Pick up a pair, which doesn't really account for too much here. We block King Jack, and Jack 9 gets there as well, so that kind of sucks. He is laying us an incredibly good price, but I still think folding here is better than continuing. Like when you check calls here, when we block the King Jack, and as I said, we could be drawing dead versus Jack 9 and stuff, just letting it go is fine. 8-9 suited there. I didn't see the pre-flop action there, but check folding when we have middle pair seems far too tight. I mean, I presume it was just a raise and we flatted, and then he c-bet. So I mean, if we flopped a pair, it's hard to flop pairs. He's going to be continuing with a decent chunk of his range there. So just check folding middle pair there is definitely too tight. On the assumption that the pre-flop action was what I think it is, but I'm pretty confident that we were out of position there. So And the pot was only 60 cents, so it must have just been a raise and a call. Ace-9, very easy open here. It's good that this player, Henrik Gass, is sticking around. He seems definitely like he's just going to be giving his chips away. Doesn't seem to want to fold too often pre, and he's nowhere near aggressive enough either. So that makes for a pretty juicy player to have position on. Bit of a pop ruin down in the bottom left table. I would assume that Gabos is calling it off here, which he is with the nut flush draw, and he just gets there versus the top set. Sick. Like when he goes ahead and he check raises that board and he gets jammed on it. I mean, my assumption is that he just does not have hands that he's ever check raised folding. He pretty much always has value or decent draws. We take it down with the 8s on the button. Again, not a hand we would have minded action with, but definitely not a disaster either. And we open up the pocket 9s as well, of course. As Rofot goes for this annoying little min click back, given that he's short stacked, I think I'd be inclined just to re-raise and get it in versus this player. It's a really annoying spot, like facing the min raise, but for 40 bigs, I'm happy enough just to get in pocket 9s there. This king is a bit of a disaster card for us now. Hopefully this goes check check. It does not. Yeah, I think as I said, I think pre-flop I'd just be re-raising here and just looking to get the money in with a very decent pocket pair. If he ever clicks it back and folds, that's a really decent result for us. And if we do get it in and we're flipping, that's fine. If we get it in and we're in trouble, then, you know, so be it. So getting a walk with the deuces, not a disaster by any stretch. So Queen Jack on the bottom left table, be absolutely looking to defend here. If the button or the cutoff were to go ahead and open, I'd be looking to use this as a 3-bet hand, but we get the walk, which is a fine result as well. The king deuce, given that there's the under the gun open, we obviously fold now. Kind of going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier in the video though, where normally I'd be folding hands that kind of weak, but given that the players in this pool don't really seem to be 3-betting much at all, I think opening that kind of hand from the button is perfectly fine, on the assumption that it's an unopened pot, of course. It would be a fold as standard for me though. The 8-9 off suit, some potentially played here. King 8 suited, obviously a trivial open there. If this were to go multi-way in the top right, I'd be inclined to call and see a flop. If no one else puts any chips in though, I'd be happy to let it go. Queen 5 suited, blind versus blind, definitely bringing that in for an open, and we get it through, which is absolutely a fine result. Obviously not a hand we're overly keen on playing post-flop poker with. And with the king queen, I'd be looking to fire here, and firing a reasonable number of turn cards just to follow through on. It's a hand where it's very, very difficult for our opponent to have connected that strongly with it. We can get him to fold some ace-high hands, and if he does call with the ace-high hands, he's going to fold to a double barrel almost certainly. And we have a decent amount of chances to improve to a good top pair hand as well. Like obviously we've got six outs to the overs. There's no potential flush on board, at least I don't think there was, if my memory serves me correctly. We have a decent amount of equity up on the top right table, a weak flush draw, top pair, and the open ender. I didn't see how that hand played out, so I can't comment on it too much. King Queen suited here versus Rothod. I mean, this is just a hand for this short a stack. We should just be getting this in pre. Like this is the same player that just clicked the back on us earlier, if my memory serves correctly. We have to fold here now on this board, but I think it's just such a trivial hand to get in for whatever it was, 20 big blinds when we've already opened the pot. Especially if he's a player that like he seems to be clicking it back as his go-to 3-bet, if he's done it twice to us now. Queen Jack up on the top left table, happy to check this back and potentially start betting on some turns. I think betting the flop, it just means we're just going to get too many folds because, you know, the only hands he can continue with are kings or queens. Kings obviously are never folding, and Queen X probably does call. So Queen X we do get some value from, but King X we are in a world of hurt against. All of his other hands are drawing very, very slim against us. It's kind of hard for him to have that many draws. He can have some definitely, but in general, I think checking back and playing the pot controlling game and giving him a chance to improve to a second best hand as well is a better option than betting that flop. Because there's no like awful turns for us really. The ace is pretty bad obviously, but that's about it. So, you know, protecting our hand doesn't really have that much merit. The suited connectors from under the gun, looking to bring that in, happy enough to do so. We flop top pair in the bottom left table. There is a potential flush draw out there. We're happy enough to go ahead and bet here. See no reason to slow down at all here. We can just go ahead and bet again. Not necessarily going to go for 3 streets here because he does have some better Jack X. Pretty sick. He turned the straight draw as well, and I think yeah, checking back there is definitely reasonable. There's some merit to betting again here, especially given some of the hands that we've seen people call down with there. You know, we've seen people call down with like, you know, the equivalent of like say 6s and 7s there on that kind of board. So there is definitely an argument to bet that river, but I think checking back is certainly reasonable as well because he can definitely have better jacks, as I said. He can have hands like King Jack and maybe Ace Jack as well if he elected not to 3-betted pre. Jack Queen and 6-5. That's an interesting hand to see play out. Some people are just absolutely wild with micros. The hand selections that you see them run bluffs with are just kind of crazy. But hey, that's what makes poker profitable, right? Pocket 4s here. The player opens very, very large here. This will be a hand I'd 3-bet very, very frequently. Versus this kind of sizing though, I am happy enough to just call because I just think we have far less fold equity when when he 4x's up. And he just absolutely just mashes the pop button, so yeah. I think it's pretty decent chance he has some strong value here. I'd be pretty surprised not to see a follow through of 350 here. Oh, he does size it down, he goes to the 180. And my assumption is he'll be all in on the river. He has the Queen 7. Wow, that is not a hand I was expecting to see at all. I was expecting to see minimum Ace Queen there. But hey, he had the top pair. Really interesting to note that he 4x's at the button there with Queen 7, so that is valuable information. Obviously, with the nature of this site, it's not going to hold true for the future, but we can definitely note this player for this particular session. For those of you, in case you didn't watch I think it was part 1 I mentioned it, Unibet allows you to change your username, and as you can see, you can actually be in the same session and have different usernames, as we're doing right now. So we're on 4 different tables, and we've got 4 different usernames. So not everyone seems to avail of this. We see there's one player, the Prof G Dog, is on at least 2 of our tables. Yeah, 2 of our tables. So not everyone seems to avail of the option, but it is there. So a bit of a disaster flop here for the Ace-King and the 5s. Although this is a very large pot with pocket 5s. I'm guessing there was a 3-bet and we flat called. Depending on the opponent's sizing there, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of calling when we're essentially just set mining. A lot of people kind of overcall in those sorts of spots. So we want to be looking for implied odds at close to 20 to 1. Or slightly less if we have a solid read on someone that they'll stack off fairly easily. But it doesn't look, based on the size of the pot there, it doesn't look like we were getting the correct implied price. But as I said, I didn't see the exact pre-flop sizing, but I know it was quite a large pot post. So it would seem that that was incorrect to do. The Jack and the 5 we can do there. Trey, given how passive this game has been overall, I think actually opening up the 4th Ray for the cutoff is pretty reasonable. There just has not been any. We haven't really been like attacked with 3-bets or anything like that. We've been allowed just to kind of play our game. So I'd be looking to expand my range as wide as I think I can get away with. And 4 Trey seems, I mean, it's definitely on the looser side for sure. And it wouldn't be as part of my standard opening range, but it would just be a kind of an exploitative change I'd be looking to make in what seems to be a very passive and overall poor pool. The Ace-9 suited in the small blind. I'll be looking to use this as a 3-bet bluff. Folding is out of the question here entirely in my book. That's my least favorite option. Calling is some merit, but folding seems far too tight for us to just to cut off open. If we're assuming any sort of reasonable range for him, Ace-9 is going to be ahead overall. And even though we are out of position, that's why I'd be inclined to use it as a 3-bet bluff with the ace blockers. We're going to get so many folds that it's going to be directly profitable, I'd argue. And then obviously we do have some situations where we flop quite strongly as well. Okay, so looks like we are rounding down the session now. So overall, I think you played quite well. Definitely some spots where we didn't, I mean, in particular, it hasn't really happened in the latter stages, but definitely early on, we've had a lot of situations where we were just kind of happy to check in the big blind, facing a few people limping in and so on, where it was just a pretty trivial ISO spot. So attacking the passive limping players is definitely an area to work on. There were a couple of spots where we kind of not betting here on the 10-Jack 8-8 board seems way too tight. Like it's very difficult. We 3-bet pre. It's very difficult for our opponent to have pocket 8s. He can definitely have some 10s and some jacks, like some pocket pairs of 10s and jacks, which is a concern. But he can also have Ace 10, King 10, even 10-Jack, which we're still ahead of given that the board is paired. This river is a disaster for us. I'm not expecting him to have much 9s. It just makes it that little bit trickier for him to call it off with those as well. But I would have been happy to fire again there on the turn and just triple barrel essentially. Just look to get max value. If we bet and we get raised, it kind of sucks. But as I said, we're just giving up too much value by not betting there. We can't always live in fear of getting raised when villains are nutted. So. And he can have some hands, maybe even queen, maybe even hands as strong as queen there, if the pool is behaving as I think they are to 3-bets, which is not really 4-betting at all. So I think probably would have played that a little bit differently, but overall seems pretty reasonable. So I'm gonna wrap it up there now with this hand. If anyone else has, as I mentioned in part 1, if anyone has any questions, queries, comments about any of the hands that we played or anything that we discussed, feel free to leave them in the relevant social media. I hope you have enjoyed watching. I've certainly enjoyed making it. As I said, this has been Fergal from PokerVIP. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I will chat to you all soon. Take care.